for buildings. But for payments, why? Let's say this is the slab. If you are pulling it, it's a tensile strength. If you are compressing it, it's a compressive strength. When you are bending it, so there will be, let's say if you are bending on the top side, upper side, so tension will be there and compression will be at the top. So when both these stresses are coming, then we say that the bending stresses, or popularly we call as a flexure strength. But dry-linked concrete, the main purpose of the dry-linked concrete is not a load-bearing layer. The main purpose of providing dry-linked concrete is during the construction, it will be providing you a smooth surface, which will be helpful for the blocks, the pavers. Okay, and then we have the pavement quality concrete. This is pavement quality concrete. The design is based upon the flexural strength, and if a flexural strength is good, then obviously other properties will be good. So there are different codes of the design. Okay, so you can note it down that for the CBR we follow IS
sir.
2720.16. For permeability we follow IS 2720.36, and we have two methods of measuring the permeability: constant head and falling head. Okay, so falling head will be used for soil, and constant head will be used when you are designing the granular surface. Then DLC, we are following RCSP 49.
Sir? Subramanya will uన్నారు కదా.
And for roller compacted concrete, IRC SP 68 2005. Now recently it has been revised, but yeah, the meetings is going on, and we are coming up with the new IRC SP 68 guidelines for the roller compacted concrete. So I think in 6 to 7 months it will be coming. So okay, starting with some fundamentals. So as you know, see, when you are designing the mixtures, let's say you are designing in your laboratory, what will you do? You have the AC at 27 degrees Celsius, 26 degrees Celsius. Okay, you are making 3 cubes or 1 or 2 beams, right? For that you are measuring the cement separately, you are measuring the aggregate separately, you are measuring the water in mLs, and you are mixing it effectively. Obviously you are getting a high strength at the laboratory. And you see in the field how they are doing the casting. They will throw the entire bag of the cement. Okay, all the aggregates they will throw it with the fan. Some of the aggregates will be going in the mixture, some will be out. Okay, so the quality control at the site is not good as what quality in the laboratory. Right? Moreover, the temperature variation is also there. So that means as a designer, it's my responsibility to take care these variations. So how I can consider this thing? I can take some factor of safety. Okay, I can design the payment for a higher, higher strength, and I can expect that at the field, because of the quality issues, because of the temperature issues, and the other issues, the strength will be lesser, right? You have to consider this thing in your design, but it should not be like that. That the let's say you are getting a 100 MPa strength at your laboratory, and the site you are getting 20 MPa. That means they have reduced the cement content, right? Or the quality construction was not there. So you have to restrict it. How we can do it? We have to do uh, some trials. Okay. So how to do it? We'll be discussing. So the strength you are targeting in the lab is known as target mean strength, right? And the strength you are expecting at the field should be the minimum strength. It is known as characteristic strength. So characteristic strength, if let's say if I have 30 samples, okay, let us take the example because this is the FDP. Okay, so teachers will be there. So 100 students are there in your class. Some of the students will be securing good marks, above 90%, 80 to 90%. Okay, but most of the class will be having the average value. Let's say 65, 55 is, let's say for simplicity, 50 marks is the average value. Okay, so most of the persons will be having within 45 to 55 range. So if you plot a normal distribution graph, so you'll be seeing that the graph will be like a bell shaped. Okay, and some of these students will be obviously failing in your classes. Okay, so similarly for concrete, if I test many number of specimens and if I keep the strength on the this axis, and then this is the standard deviations, right? And what I can see here that if I'm doing if I'm testing 30 number of specimens, what is the average value? Average value will be under this curve. Okay, under this curve will be the average value. And some of the cubes will be having good strength, some of these cubes will be falling, will be failing, right? So you have to design for this strength in the laboratory. Okay, because some of the cubes will be getting high strength. You cannot say to the contractor that, yeah, you have to achieve this strength. Okay, so you have to always report the average value, and that the average value will be mean strength. You can say the target mean strength, and only 5% of the specimens that are failing, you remove that specimen and then you suggest this reading to the field engineer. And this strength is known as characteristic strength. That means in the site, in the laboratory, you are designing for a higher strength, and at the site, you are expecting that if you are testing 30 specimens, if the 5 specimens are failing in your laboratory, okay, you remove those 5 specimens and then you give this value that should be achieved at the field, and that is known as the characteristic strength. So how to get this value? You cannot test 30 specimens, but you can, right? So what you can do, let's say if somebody is coming to you to design the payment, let's say they are coming with for M40. M40 means it is the grade of the concrete. M40 means 40 is the value of the strength at 20 days of the curing at field condition. Okay, so obviously you need that in the site 40 MPa strength should be achieved at 20 days of the curing. So let's say this value is 40. So obviously you have to take some factor of safety. So how you can do? You can use this formula. So if I keep 40 here, this is the standard deviation, and you find out the standard deviation between different specimens, and you multiply by the tolerance factor of 1.65. Obviously, it's a sum. So this value F dash here, that is your mean strength, target strength will be higher. Okay, so you have two relations. Either you can use this one or this one, and which one will be giving you more value, you have to consider that value. Okay. So how to calculate the standard deviation? It's a simple mathematical things. If you are having, a single group, you have to use this formula. If you are having more groups, let's say 2 RMCs are coming with little bit different, composition, then you have to calculate the standard deviation with the help of this relationship, wherein n is number of your observations. Okay, first mixture, second mixture, and S is your standard deviation for one truck, and S2 is for other truck, and this is the combined standard deviation. Okay, so you'll be getting the standard deviation value from there and multiplied by 1.65, and then add it to the strength that should be achieved at the field, and you'll be getting a higher value, let's say 48 value. That means you need to design your mixture in your laboratory, 48 MPa should be achieved, right? Then only you can ascertain that at the site 40 MPa will be achieved. So this is the fundamental when you're designing any concrete, whether it's for the pavement application or the building application. Okay, but if you don't have the standard deviation value, the code suggests you that if you are designing between 10 MPa to 60 MPa, remember this M is here grade of the concrete. 10, the value correspond to the strength at 20 days of the curing. So if you're designing a lean concrete, that is for the base course, or you're designing your pavement quality concrete that will having 40 MPa strength, you can assume a value of 5. So again, if you use that formula, F dot CR is equal to FCR plus 1.65 into standard deviation. So standard deviation will be 5 here, and then the contractor asks you for 40, you do it, then your value will be 48.25. That means at this laboratory you have to design for 48.25, and then at the site it will be achieving 40 MPa. If it is not achieving 40 MPa because you have already considered all the variations, then you have to say to the contractor that this payment is failed. Okay, you have to replace the payment. But if they achieve the minimum value 40, then you can pass it. Okay, but now you will be saying that sir said that the payments are designed based upon the flexure strength, and this grading M10, M20, M30, this is for compressive strength. How? Why should we do it? So obviously you are right. We have to go with the flexure strength. So same formula can be used for the flexure strength also. Okay. So, but the standard deviation value, if you see, here is 0.35 and this is 5. Okay, so obviously it will be lesser. Now the condition, testing conditions. So this is one of the main things where most of the researchers will be failing. Okay, so what they do, we have beams. Okay, we have cubes. Let's say cube. We consider the compressive strength. So we are framing the cubes. Okay, so cube size is generally 150 mm into 150 mm into 150 mm. That's how they are cubical. But we have smaller cubes also, 10 centimeter cubes. Okay, when to use 10 centimeter, when to use 15 centimeter. So this is a thumb rule, you can follow it. When your nominal size of the aggregate is more than 20 mm, you have to always test it with the help of 150 mm cubical. Okay, and what is this normal maximum size? Let's say I came across with some aggregates, okay, and I did the sieve analysis, and what I found that, let's say 31.5 mm sieve is there, okay, 100% aggregates are passing from 31.5. I have 26 mm sieve size, again 100% are passing. I have 19 mm sieve, so 90%, 95% of the aggregate are passing. I have 12 mm sieve, from which 90% of, let's say 89% of aggregates are passing. So how to determine the nominal maximum size? So you should see the smallest sieve from which 100% of the aggregates are passing. That means it is the maximum size. Okay, and the sieve, the first sieve from at which around 5 to 10% of the aggregates are retaining, it will be your nominal maximum size. Okay, remember this thing. For the flexible pavement, it is different. For the concrete, it is different. Okay. So when your nominal maximum size is 20 mm, that means on 20 mm sieve, if some of the fractions of the aggregates are retaining, then you have to use 15 centimeter cube for compressive strength. If it is lesser, then you can select 10 mm or 10 centimeter cubical specimen. Why we are doing it? We should know it, right? So the fundamental principle behind it is that we did some test. What we found that, let's say this is your cube. Okay, so you are compacting it in 3 layers. So what will happen if the size of the aggregate is more? Okay, so at the wall, this is the wall of the cube. Okay, so there will be not a good orientation of the aggregate, and because of this, more cement paste or mortar paste will be required at the wall because of this is known as wall effect. Okay, so at the walls, more cement paste or more cement mortar paste will be required as compared to the paste required at the interior of your cubical specimens, right? So we did the test, and what we found that for a nominal maximum size of 19 mm, and if I use a cubical specimen of 101.06 mm, 10% extra mortar was required to properly compact the specimens. So you know the mortar, what is mortar? Cement plus sand plus water. Okay, that means more cement is required. So it will not be economical, right? You cannot say that I did a testing on this mm of aggregate. Now at the field, okay, you are making a payment, then you have to get this strength with this cement content because you are utilizing more cement content here. Okay, this will be a mismatch. Okay. Then we did more investigations. What we found that this wall effect phenomena is more for cubical specimens, and then it will be lesser for flexural specimens, that is beams. Okay. So as per some thumb rules, what you can do, if your maximum nominal size of the aggregate, let's say 31, multiply it by 4 to 5 times, then you select your cubical specimen. Let's say I'm multiplying it by 5, it will be 150 mm. So obviously 150 mm cubical specimens can be used. So PQC, the maximum size of the aggregate is 31.5, the nominal size is around 26.5. So obviously, if you multiply it by 5, it will be less than 150 mm. So that means 150 mm cubical specimens is always to be used for pavement quality concrete mixes. Now some of the other fundamentals. See, you are making a cubical specimens in the lab, and at the field, what is happening when you are doing for the quality control? You cannot cut a cubical specimens from the field. you have to drill a core cutter which will be giving you cylindrical specimen. How to relate this cube specimen with this cylindrical specimen? Okay, so there should be some fundamental behind it, right? So we have some equations which you can use. But when you are drilling a cube, one core from the pavement, you have to find one thing. That is, the ratio between the diameter and the height should always be more than 1. So that is, if you are taking a core out of a pavement, it is 100 mm diameter, 100 mm length, that is okay. But if it is go beyond it, then you should not do it. Okay, it will not be a representative sample. Okay, and how to relate it? What you can do, that the cores that has been extracted from the field, okay, but you did the mixed design by considering a cube. In that case, you have to reduce your cube strength by 20%, and you can say, let's say if you design for 40 MPa, you reduce it by 20%, and that strength should be achieved at the field. Okay. Then similarly, the wall effect will be there, little bit wall effect will be there in the flexure strength specimens. So this rule you can follow. Then when your nominal maximum size is more than 20 mm, you can go with 100 into 100 into 500 mm specimens. But when it's more than 20 mm, you should go with 150 into 150 into 700 mm specimens. And remember, in most of the laboratories, what I have seen, that for PQC, they are casting a specimen size of 100 into 100 into 500 mm. This is not right. Okay. And yeah, one more thing. So generally what happens, if you are from the structural background, you know how to calculate the flexure strength. You will be doing a 3-point bending test. Okay. But for payments, you have to use 4-point bending test, not the 3-point bending test. The reason being, payment fails in pure bending. Okay. So the vehicle will be coming, and because of the temperature differential that we discussed in the previous lecture, okay, there will be bending. Okay, there is no shear. So if you draw the shear force and bending moment diagram for a 3-point bending, what you see here, that the shear force will be like this, and the bending moment will be, the bending moment will be like this, and shear force will be like this. That means, in this portion, if a crack is coming, so the crack, you cannot predict whether it's because of the shear or because of the bending. But when you draw the shear force and bending moment diagram for a 4-point flexure strength, you can see the shear force will be occurring in this area only. Okay, and here there will be pure bending. And when the crack is occurring in this portion, then you can say that this is representing your concrete pavement. Okay, so in your lab, if you have a 3-point bending test, you should not use it. For the pavement, you have to use 4-point bending test. Okay, so now coming to the, what are the, before that, let me clear something. When I use mortar means it will be combination of cement plus sand plus water. If I add aggregate in it, if I add aggregate, coarse aggregate in mortar, then I'll be calling as a concrete. Okay, you should remember this difference. So what are the various factors that will be affecting your mixture design? Obviously, the cement and water content. Okay, so you see this, water is in numerator and cement is in denominator. Okay, so what we do, if I increase the cement content, the strength will be more, right? If I increase the water content, the strength will be less. So we can relate it. Okay, how we relate it? When you increase the water content, your water by cement, because water is the numerator, the ratio will be increasing and the strength will be decreasing. Okay, and this law is known as Abraham's law, right? So obviously, depending upon the cement content and the water content, your mixture designing will be different and it will be behaving differently. Also, if you have all the ideal conditions, if you have two mixes with the same water content, with the same cement content, then also strength can be different. That is because of the degree of compaction. Let's see this curve again. Let's say you have some aggregates. Okay, you have same water content, you have same cement content, then also you can have at a particular water by cement ratio, you can have 3 compressive strengths varying from 20 MPa to 60 MPa. Okay, this is because you are not able to compact it effectively. Okay, so you should remember that the workability should also be a design parameter when you are designing your it says. Then obviously aggregate properties. If you have circular aggregates, aggregate to aggregate interlocking will not be there. So in case of the payment, we are getting the strength because of aggregate to aggregate interlocking. So that means you have to use the angular aggregates. Okay. Similarly, if you have well-graded aggregates, okay. So if you have well-graded aggregates, the cement requirement will be lesser and your mixed design will be different. If you have poorly graded aggregates, okay, there will be more porosity. There will be more porosity in your concrete mixture, so more cement will be required. Okay, so try to use well-graded aggregates. Now, this is an interesting question because if I can see my grandfather's home, they were having no. Nowadays we have the concrete slab. They were having the stone slabs at that time. Okay, obviously, if you see the UCS value of the aggregate, it will be around 150 MPa or 100 MPa. Okay, and if you see the concrete pavement, the strength is 40 MPa. So obviously, the concrete, if my aggregate is strong, let's say 100 MPa, and if I have the concrete of 40 MPa, right? So aggregate will always be stronger than cement paste or the mortar paste. Okay, so that means if I increase the size of the aggregate, that means strength I should get more, right? No, it's not like that. Because if you see, it's a composite matrix now. If I load it, the crack will be going to the weakest link. And the weakest link is generally the interfacial transition zone between the aggregate and the mortar. Why? If you use big size aggregate, so more water will be there near to the periphery of the aggregates. Okay, so if there is more water, so what will happen? Your water by cement ratio will be more. If your water by cement ratio is more, your strength will be lesser. So your strength of the mortar will be more, your strength of the aggregate will be more, but the strength at the interfacial transition zone will be lesser. So obviously when you load it, the crack will be propagating through interfacial transition zone and the pavement will be failing. Right? So to reduce it, you have to use lesser size of the aggregate. Okay, you can use some thumb law. Okay, thumb rule is that the size of the aggregate, should be 5 times lesser than the size of your specimen. Okay, if I have a specimen of 100 mm, my size of the aggregate should be, if you divide it by 5, it should be less than 20 mm. Okay, and this also will take into account the aggregate to aggregate interlocking, because if you have aggregates, small aggregates, then aggregate to aggregate interlocking will be better and you will be having a good interfacial transition zone. Okay, and then we have, okay, now how much proportion of the coarse aggregate and fine aggregate should be there, right? Because we said well graded aggregates. So we did some investigation and what we found that if you keep on increasing the sand content, okay, if you keep on increasing this, because see, now let's say these are the coarse aggregates. If you have packed it in a specimen, there will be voids. These voids will be filled by sand, right? And if these voids are filled by the sand, your porosity will be reduced. If your porosity is reduced, the cement requirement will be lesser, right? So if you keep on increasing your sand content, the porosity will be reducing, the cement content will be reducing. But after a threshold value, it will again start on increasing, because if you use more fine aggregates, there will be more voids because of high surface area. So that means the proportion of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate should also be optimum. As a thumb rule, you can go with 60% of coarse aggregate and 40% of fine aggregate, but you need to test it. Okay, and also nowadays we are having fly ash, we are using silica fume. Okay, it will also have an effect on the mixed design. How? This is the hydration reaction. If I add cement with water, 3 products will be formed. Okay, one is calcium silicate hydrate that will be giving you strength. Then there will be a calcium hydroxide which will not be giving you anything, which will be occupying only space. So around 20 to 40% space is occupied by calcium hydroxide. Okay, and then it's a hydration reaction. The heat will be more. Okay, so what I can do, I know CHS gel will be giving me strength and calcium hydroxide, which is CH, is giving nothing. Okay, can't I convert this CH into CHS? Obviously, you have to add S from outside so that this CH can be converted into CHS. Right. So you have to explore for all the materials. Like fly ash is having around 60% of silica, so you can use it. Silica fume is having around 85% of silica. So obviously, if you add it in your mixture, you will be having more CHSL. Subsequently, you will be having more strength. Okay, so these are some of the design fundamentals. Okay, the other thing is that we have two methods of doing the batching. One is weighing batching. Okay, you will weighing different aggregates differently, cement differently, and then you have one, you have the volume batching, which is mostly adopted. Okay, they will be pan, so they will be taking the pan and they will be throwing it. So if I ask you this question, which method is good one? So obviously weight batching seems to be better one, but no. Let's take an example. Nowadays, recycled aggregates are used. Okay, so recycled aggregates, they will be having same size. Let's say this is also 20 mm, this is also 20 mm. But this aggregate is having more pores. So if it is a more pores, but the weight, I should not say weight, the density or specific gravity of this aggregate will be lesser. So if I weighing it, what will happen? Let's say, for a example only, two aggregates will be equivalent to one aggregate of high density aggregates. But you know concrete. Okay, concrete, it has a specific volume. So I have to use 8 aggregates. But now if I follow the weighing approach, I'll be replacing more, 4 aggregates of high density with the 4 aggregates of the low density. Why? Because concrete has a definite volume. Right? So what we should do? So we need to design based upon the volume, but at the site, we have to convert the volume into weighing and then give it to them. So for the researchers, for the academicians, when you are doing the mix design, you should always use volumetric approach. And when you are giving to the contractor, because they will be using pans. Okay, so when they are mixing the coarse aggregate, the pan will be like this. Okay, the aggregates will be like this. When they are mixing the cement, okay, they will keep lesser cement. Okay, so then for quality control, you convert your volume things into the weighing and then suggest them. So definitely, specific gravity you need to consider. Also, like we discussed, if you use the well-graded aggregates, the porosity will be lesser, okay, and the cement content will be lesser. If you are using poorly graded, more voids will be there, more cement requirement will be there. Okay, obviously, how much water will be, will be absorbed by the aggregates will also be leading when you are designing the mix design. And for quality control, you should have a relationship between the water by cement ratio and strength. Okay, because sometimes what happens at the field, they will be saying, open the field after 3 days, after for the traffic. But we don't know how much strength it will be achieved, right? So we have to do the testing at different days. Okay, and then we should have a relationship. Also, other things should be required. And these are the normal steps which are followed globally for the designing of a concrete mixture, whether it's for the payments or whether it's for the structures. Okay, the same method will be adopting for today's class. Okay, but there are some deviation in case of the payments. Slump. Why the slump is required? Let's say if I'm making one column. Okay, so I need more slump so that the aggregates, the mixture will be going at the down direction. If the aggregate or the mixture is stiff, it will be held here only. So you need to provide more vibrations, right? But for the payments, what happens? We know the height of the payment is only 20 to 40 centimeter, right? So we can use some, stiff mixes. So that's why the slump value for the highway, that is per payment quality concrete, is lesser as compared to your as compared to the building infrastructure concrete. Okay, so we'll be coming to the step by step. See, the mixed design is little bit typical. Okay, but I have framed it in a simple manner. So you have to remember this photo. What we are having, we should have coarse aggregate. Coarse aggregate, we are having different sizes of the coarse aggregate because of the quarries or the crushers. You will be having different aggregates. So I have to mix all the aggregates together. We have the fine aggregates. Okay, obviously we should have the fine aggregates. Then we have cement. Nowadays we are using fly ash. We call them as supplementary cement admixtures. You have the water, you have the air. Okay, so I followed the same approach which is followed for the design of the flexible payment. Okay, you should remember this figure. Now, as a designer, what's my responsibility? My responsibility is that I have to calculate the volume of all these things, right? And then, because you are a designer and you know that the field, if they adopt the volume method, it will not be good at the field. Then you can convert these volumes into the weighing. How? Because you know the formula, density is equal to mass upon volume. Now you got the volume, density is nothing but specific gravity into 1000. Okay, if you know the specific gravity of cement, water, fine aggregate, coarse aggregate, you will get the density. And when you relate it, you can get the mass. Okay, this is the simple formula I'll be using throughout the lecture. Okay, so now coming, you have to remember this figure. Okay, so first of all, we'll go one by one. How to design it. First thing, air will be coming. Okay, so the air, how much air will be there? Because you are compacting the concrete, the aggregates will be there. So there will be some air voids, right? We cannot, make a concrete with, zero air voids. There will be always some air voids. So IRC 44 guidelines gives a table. Okay, so air voids depends upon the size of the aggregate. Larger the size of the aggregate, lesser will be the air voids, because larger the size of the aggregate, the surface area will be lesser. If I break it into small pieces, so the surface area will be more. So if the surface area is more, the voids will be higher. Okay, if you can see here. So you can use this table. Okay. Now what is the second step? You know maximum nominal size for PQC is, let's say, 26.5. You can get the air value from this table. Now what is the second thing? Is water, fly ash and cement. How to do it? So if I know, let's say we don't use fly ash now. Let's suppose I need to calculate water and cement. How to do it? So IRC 44 code gives you, the based upon the flexure strength requirement at the field. The flexure strength requirement at the field in most of the cases is 4.5 MPa at 20 days of the curie. They say that if you are using a cement of 43 grade, then the maximum water by cement ratio that you have to be using is 0.39. That is, if my water by cement ratio, I have to use it as 0.39. Okay, because at the field I have to achieve a flexure strength value 4.5. Okay, so now I have this formula. If I can get the value of water, obviously I can predict the cement value, right? So how to do it? How to calculate the water? So again, how much water will be required depending upon many parameters. Obviously, if you use more cement, more surface area will be there, more water. Somebody has to mute. Somebody has to mute. Please mute yourself. Then, obviously, like we discussed, if the size of the aggregate is more, the surface area will be less water will be required. If the shape of the aggregates are angular, that's what we require, right? Then, if the shape of the aggregate is angular, more surface area will be there. If my shape is rounded, lesser surface area, lesser water will be there. But you should remember, we are getting the strength because of aggregate to aggregate interlocking also. So that's why we also always prefer angular aggregate. Similarly, if the texture of the aggregate is rough, more surface area, more water. If you are using some fly ash, less water will be required, because fly ash, if you do the microstructure analysis, they are round shape. And when something is round shape, like a cycle, the tires are rounded. So surface area is lesser, so less water will be required. And if you are using some waste materials from the agriculture field or industries, based upon the type of the material you are using, it will be there. Okay. Similarly, nowadays, what we are using superplasticizers. So if you are using superplasticizers, it can reduce the consumption of water. And there are many other parameters. Okay. So IRC code gives you the liberty to select the water content. Okay, based upon the size of the aggregate. So, like we discussed, as the size of the aggregate will increase, the water requirement will be lesser. So, from this table, you can calculate the water content. Okay, but you should remember this table, the IRC 44 gives you, is valid for a water by cement ratio of, the slump value of 50 mm. Okay, for a slump value 50 mm, but for PQC, you need a slump value of 25 mm. Then the question arises, how can I use this table? You can use it because IRC gives you the liberty that if you want to use lesser slab, means less water will be required. You can reduce the water content by 3% for every 25 mm slump value, right? So let's say if you are using 31.5 mm nominal size of the aggregate, the water requirement is 165, but it is for buildings. For the payments, we need 25 mm. So that means you have to reduce it by 3%, and that water you can use it. Now I have water by cement ratio of 0.39. I have water content from here. Okay, I can simply calculate the cement content, right? Then if I calculate the cement content, one thing is there, this perception that use higher content of cement, you'll get more strength. Yes, it is right. But if you use more cement, then the stresses that we discussed because of frictional stresses, right? The shrinkage stresses will be higher. So that's why IRC says that you cannot go beyond a cement content of 450. But for strength, you need to have the minimum cement content, that is 360 kg per meter cube. Okay, so after calculating the cement content, you need to do the cross checking. Okay, so let's say if you are using fly ash, so what will happen? At the site, you have seen that fly ash will be used as partial replacement of cement by weighing. Okay, if you are using 10% of cement, 10% of fly ash, replace the cement by weight. Okay, it's not good approach. Okay, but yeah, it's a other concern that how to take into account. So what we can do, because we are using fly ash, it will be having silica as we discussed. It will also be having some lime content. That means it's also a cement type of thing, right? So we can increase the cementitious content with this thing. How to do it? I'll show you. Let's say you are using 20% fly ash and you were using earlier 100 kg of cement. Okay, so that means how much fly ash should be used? The general rule is use 80 kg of cement and 20 kg of fly ash. Okay, this is the rule that is followed, but this rule is wrong because we know fly ash is having lime as well as silica, so it's a cementitious material. Okay, secondary pozzolanic material. So what we can do, the amount of the cement should be increased by 10%. Okay, when you are using fly ash, let's say you are using 100 kg, now the cementitious content will be 110 kg. Okay, then now replace 20% of this 110 kg by fly ash and the rest will use cement. If you calculate it, then you will see that your cement content requirement will be more and your fly ash consumption will be more. Okay, so don't simply go with 20% of 100 kg. You have to first increase the cementitious content because fly ash is also a secondary pozzolanic material. Okay, then coming to the coarse aggregate, there is not a, there is a code that is given in the IRC 44. There is a table given in IRC 44. So based upon the type of the sand particles, based upon the size of the aggregate, you can select the ratio of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate. You have to remember, in previous cases, we were getting the values in kg. Cement in kg, if you see here, let me go. Okay, here you are getting cement in kg, water in kg. Okay, but here we don't have any method to calculate the coarse aggregate requirement in kg. So we'll be calculating the ratio of coarse aggregate with respect to fine aggregate with the help of this table. Okay, so based upon the type of your fine aggregate and size of your aggregate, you will be calculating the ratio of coarse aggregate to fine aggregate. Okay, again, because we are adopting all the things from buildings, so this is for a water by cement ratio of 0.5. Okay, and for this example, how much water by cement ratio we found out is 0.39 to get a flexure strength of 4.5 at the field, right? So how can I use this table? Again, if you read the notes given in the code, it says that this volume should be increased. Okay, if you are reducing the water by cement ratio. Okay, let's say this is the value 0.65 for a nominal size of 26.5, and this is valid for a water by cement ratio of 0.5. Now my water by cement ratio, let's say, is 0.32. Then what you have to do, you have to increase this proportion. Okay, by how much? You keep 0.65, then plus you have to increase it by 0.01 meter cube for every decrease in water by cement ratio of 0.05. Okay, so this is the normal method. So how we are doing, let's say like in the school days we used to say, if 5 apples are of 1 rupees, how many apples of, what is the cost of 1 apple? It will be 1 by 5. Then what will be cost of 10 apples? To multiply it by 10. Okay, then add it to some value. Similarly, they have done. Okay, so this is the thing. Then once you get the proportion of coarse aggregate, subtract it by 1, you will be getting the volume of the fine aggregate. Okay, this 65 means 65% coarse aggregate, obviously 35% will be fine aggregate. Okay, so this is the normal procedure you have to follow. Okay, now the twist here, you have calculated the water, mass of the fly ash, mass of the cement. Now you don't have the mass of the fine aggregate and mass of the coarse aggregate. How to calculate it? So there is a approach. Okay, what we can say that let us assume that you are designing a concrete of 1 meter. Okay, you know the volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate, right? I know the mass of the water. So again follow this method. Density is equal to mass upon volume. You know the density of water is 1 into 1000. Okay, you know the volume, you know the mass of the water that has been calculated with the help of the table given in IC 44, you can get the volume, right? Similarly, you have to calculate the volume of air, volume of water, volume of fly ash, volume of cement. I know I am designing the concrete for 1 meter cube concrete. If I know the volume of all the things, if I subtract the volume, these volumes from 1 meter cube, I'll be getting a volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate. Let's say V1, V2, right? And I know the volume of fine and coarse aggregate with respect to each other, right? So I can convert it into individual volumes. So I'll be getting the volumes for all. Then again using the same formula, I'll be converting into masses. You don't need to worry. We'll take one example also. Okay, how to do it? Let's say this is the concrete mix design that came to me for the designing of a concrete pavement quality concrete. They asked me, it is for the national highway. That means I suggested them you should reach a value 4.5 MPa at 20 days of the curing. They were using OPC 43 grade concrete. The size of the aggregates were 31.5, and these are all the values. Okay, so I followed the same steps. First of all, I have to follow the target mean strength. Okay, obviously they want to achieve a 4.5 MPa strength at the field. So definitely I have to go with a higher. Okay, so I use the IRC 44 specification which says that if you want to design for 4.5 MPa, you have to use a standard deviation value of 0.4, right? So I kept 0.4 here and I calculated the mean strength, target mean strength that I should achieve so that at the field, by taking a factor of safety, lesser strength will be achieved. Okay, so here I keep it 4.5 here, 0.4 here, I go to value 5.6. So that means I have to get a value of 5.6 in the lab. Then only at the field 4.5 will be achieved. Okay. Then again, I have to design all the things. I followed the simple procedure that we have discussed. First thing, calculate the air, then water, then cement, then fine aggregate, then coarse aggregate. Okay. So air, we have the table, and you know they will be using 31.5 mm size aggregate. So the volume of the air is 0.8% by volume of concrete. Okay, I got it. Then what about the water? Okay, so because they have to achieve 4.5 at the field, right? The water, and they are using 43 grade cement. That means the water by cement ratio should be selected at 0.39. No, you should remember that this is at the field. I am designing for a high strength. Okay, I am designing for 5.16. So that means the water by cement ratio should be lesser. So the code gives me liberty that if you are want to achieve a strength of 5 MP in the laboratory, not in the field, the water by cement ratio should be 0.34. If I have to design it for 0.5, then it's 0.28. Now my strength requirement, target mean strength is 5.36. I have to do the interpolation. So when I do the interpolation, I'll be getting a value of 0.32. Okay, that means I'm going in right direction. Okay, now I get the water by cement ratio. Now I have to calculate the water, right? Now water by cement ratio is 0.3, so that I can get the value of cement also. Okay, so again we'll go back to the code. Code says that because you are using an aggregate size of 31.5, you have to use 165 kg of water. Okay, but this is for a slump value of 50 mm, right? And my client asked me, we are going for a PQC where requirement is 25. That means there is a lesser lesser slump value. So we discussed, right, in the notes given that when you are designing the mixture for the slumps other than 50 mm, you decrease your water content for every decrease of decreasing by 3% by for every 25 mm reduction in the slump value. This table is valid for 50 mm. I have to design it for 25 mm. That means there is straight away 25 mm reduction. So I can reduce the water content by 3%. So if I reduce it, I'll get a value of 160 kg. So see, because here the slump requirement was more water was required. Here the slump requirement is lesser, so lesser water is required. Moreover, nowadays we are using super plasticizers. Okay, it can reduce the consumption of water. Okay, so if you are using some super plasticizers, you can further reduce on the safer side. To be on the safer side, you can reduce this the water content by 20%. Okay, now the updated water requirement is 128. Now I know my requirement of water by cement ratio is 0.32. The water is 128. I can get the C value. So I got a C value of 400 kg. Okay, now you have to make one check. This should be less than 450 and this should be greater than 360 because you need minimum cement content, right? But you cannot go beyond 450 because of the shrinkage induced stresses. So I checked it. I found that this 400 is falling within 360 and 450. That means till now I am going in the right direction. Okay. Now I got the air, water, cement because the client are not using fly ash, so we can remove it. Right, now we need to get the value fine aggregate and coarse aggregate, and you don't have to hold your ears from this side, you have to come from this direction. So what we have to do, we don't have any methods. So first of all, we'll be calculating the ratio of coarse aggregate with respect to fine aggregate. So how we can do? We'll again go back to the same table, and the client is using zone 2 of fine aggregate and 31.5 mm of coarse aggregate nominal size. So the coarse ratio should be 65% coarse aggregate and 35% fine aggregate. But again, these all readings, all values we are taking from the building specifications, okay, which was valid for a water by cement ratio of 0.5. But in my case, the water by cement ratio requirement is 0.32. So if I have to reduce the water by cement ratio, it means I have to increase this ratio by how much? By 0.01 meter cube for every decrease in water by cement ratio. So I did it. And what I found that in order to use this table for a water by cement ratio of 0.32, I need to increase my coarse aggregate content by around 3%. Okay, so I find out. After that, what you see here, that now I know the mass of water, mass of cement, mass of air, but I don't have the mass of fine aggregate and mass of coarse aggregate. Okay, so adopting the same method, what I can do, I can consider that the total volume of 1 meter cube. I can convert all the volumes, all these masses into volumes. Okay, and then subtract it from the entire volume. I'll be getting the volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate, right? And I know the volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate with respect to each other, but not separately. Then I can do it with the help of this formula: density is equal to mass by volume, right? So I'll use this formula. So what I did, I know first of all we need to convert the masses into volume, right? With the table, I got 8% of air voids, and I have 1 meter cube of concrete that I'm casting. So reduce 8% of 1 meter cube, you'll be getting a volume of 0.992 meter cube, right? And I know I'm using 400 kg of cement. You know, density is equal to mass upon volume. Your mass is 400 kg. Your density is specific gravity. What is the specific gravity of cement? 3.15 into that 1000, and then you bring this value to here. You will getting the mass. Sorry, volume. Similarly, you are following for water. You are following for the super plasticizers, and then if you reduce the if you subtract this cement, water, air from 1 meter cube concrete, you will be getting the volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate that I did it. So the volume of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate in total, I got 0.73372. Okay, then you have to use density is equal to mass upon formula again. Now you know the volume, the total volume, and you know coarse aggregate and fine aggregate are used in a proportion of 65 and 35%. You multiply it by, okay, like 68% of coarse aggregate. So this volume, that the volume you are getting, 68% is coarse aggregate and your 32% is fine aggregate, right? And you know this formula, you know the density because you know the specific gravity, you know the volume. Now 68% of this, you can get the mass value. So I got the mass value of coarse aggregate, I got the mass value of fine aggregate, right? Already I was having the mass value of cement, water and superplasticizer. Now the mixed design is over. So it's a simple procedure. Okay, it's very simple procedure. But you should remember one thing, that you are doing all these experiments in saturated surface dry condition. That means your aggregates are soaked with water, all the pores are soaked with water, and your surface is dry. But at this site, this is not feasible because there will be some issues. One of the issue is bulking of sand. Okay, so bulking of sand means if there is some water, the volume will be increasing, but the weight will be reduced. Okay, this was the thing that we were discussing, that when they are taking the aggregates, okay, they will be having more aggregate, but when they are taking the cement, you can see cement will be like this. Okay, to reduce the cement consumption at the field. So volume approach is not good at the field. Weighing approach is good at the field, but for designing you have to follow the volume approach because of the difference in the specific gravity values. Okay. So how to convert this SSD condition into dry condition, because at the field dry aggregates will be used. Obviously you know the water absorption, right? If you know the water absorption of coarse aggregate and fine aggregate, because you did in the saturated surface dry condition, to reduce the water absorption, that if I mix my aggregates in dry condition in the mixture, and in other mixture if I am mixing in wet condition, so obviously the aggregate shape is same, but because this aggregate is having more water, it will be heavier, right? If I'm subtracting this water, so what will happen? It will absorb. Once it gets inside the mixer, it will again absorb the water. So what we should do? So what we can do, in order to account the dry aggregates, to reduce the water absorption from coarse and fine aggregate and add up to the water, because definitely once it gets into the mixer, it will absorb the water. So this is how the mixed design works. Okay. So yeah, we have 5 more minutes. Okay. Oh, sorry, 10 more minutes. So what we can do, we can cover a little bit other mixes also. So in concrete, we have PQC, we discuss how to do the mixed design. Then we have DLC, how to do it. So you should know that the same method cannot be used, because dry concrete mixtures are compacted with the rollers. Okay, that is, it's a soil only. So how we are designing the soil, if you remember, you have to find out the OMC and MDD value. Okay, so you have to follow the soil compaction. Okay, so the IRC 49 code, this is corresponding to IRC SP 49, which says that you have to achieve 10 MPa strength, compressive strength. Remember, 7 days, at 7 days, at not 28 days. Okay, so you have to do all the mixed designing in order to get a strength of 10 MPa at the site. Okay, so same process we'll be adopting. In case of the DLC, you have to find the value of the coarse aggregate, fine aggregate, cement. If you are using some fly ash, water and air will be there. Right? Same diagram I'm making it. You have to remember it. But here you should remember, we are not following that method. We are following OMC and MDD. So what you have to do, first of all, you calculate the, you assume some aggregate to cement ratio, which is given in the code. Okay, when you are using cement, then the maximum aggregate to cement ratio could be assumed as 14:1. So let's say you have selected the aggregate to cement ratio as 14:1. Then select some cement content. Okay, now you have assumed the coarse aggregate and fine aggregate. Then assume some cement content. Let's say it should be more than 150 kg as per most specification, 150 kg per meter cube. Now you have selected the cement content as well as. Okay, mix coarse aggregate, fine aggregate cement, do the Proctor test, okay, and then find out the water content at which you are getting the maximum density, that is maximum dry density. Okay, how to do it? Let's say first thing is mix the coarse aggregate, fine aggregate together. Okay, we did it. We mix the coarse aggregate and fine aggregate following the specification provided in ICSP 49. Then I have assumed the cement content. Let's say code says it should be more than 150 kg. I have assumed 150 kg only. Then I mix coarse aggregate, fine aggregate, cement, and then I have to follow the soil compaction law. Okay, and then keep on increasing the water content, and then keep on measuring the density value. So what will happen? The density will keep on increasing, right? But at one time the density starts falling. Okay, and you should know density has a relationship with the compressive strength. As the density increases, the strength will also be increasing in most of the cases. Right. So if you keep on increasing the water content, the density will be increasing up to a point after which it will be reducing. So this point at which the density was maximum, the corresponding water content will be your optimum moisture content. That means the water content will be calculated by Proctor density. Okay, and then now you got the water value, you got the cement value, you got the the coarse aggregate, fine aggregate value. Then prepare the specimens. So remember, while you are preparing the specimens, you have to use vibratory hammer. So this is a special apparatus. It's not it's a simple one. If you see, it's a drilling machine, but with the drilling machine, they will be having one base plate. Okay, you have to compact in 3 layers with the help of this thing, and you have to cast 6 specimens at OMC and find out the strength at 7 days of the QA. If your strength is not achieved at 10 MPa, then what you have to do? You have to increase the cement content. We have assumed a cement content of 150 kg, increase it to 10 kg, 20 kg, 30 kg. Keep on doing the trial until you get a until you get a strength requirement of 10 MPa. Okay, so same process is used for roller compacted concrete. Okay, if you see the roller compacted concrete, you have to select the aggregate proportion. You have to select the cement content, find out the OMC MDD value. Then here you have to aggregate beam specimens, not the tube specimen, because roller compacted concrete is designed with respect to IRC IRC 58, and the mix is designed based upon IRC SP 68. It behaves like a concrete. And the benefit of roller compacted concrete is that it can achieve the same strength of normal PQC at a lesser cement content, and it will be compacted by the rollers. Okay, so that means it can be open to traffic just after its construction. So this is a popular technology which is coming to the India and which will replace the normal construction, PQC construction by the roller compacted because of its advantages over the pavement quality concrete. And because the cement content is lesser, frictional stresses will be lesser, the joint spacing will be more. Okay. And same mixed design approach we are following for paver blocks. Okay, so I think for paver blocks, if you want to know something, Sumit Nandi is an attendee today. He is working on paver concrete blocks. Okay, so the same, if you have any doubts, you can find out. He's doing PhD in IIT Roorkee. So what you can do, you have to assume a water by cement ratio. You have to assume the cement content, then find out the OMC MDD value, then do the casting, and then if your value is good, then okay. If the value is not good, increase your cement content or reduce your water by cement ratio. So with this, I conclude both the presentations for today. Okay. Thank you very much for attending. Now I'm open for the question and answer round.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
2 hours, almost 3 hours. You started at 10 o'clock. Now it's 12:45.
Yeah, I'm feeling hungry now.
12:45 minutes. So there are questions. I request you kindly just go through the chat box.
Okay, yeah. So the first question is from Popat Kumar. So see, he asked, Please tell us the values 34.106. Okay, these are the standard deviation. You know, when you plot your curve, okay, and let's say you are teaching in the class, okay, and you conducted your exam. So some of the persons will be getting good marks, more than 90%. Some will be getting lesser marks. Some will be getting average marks. So how many persons, how many students got the marks in a range of 40 to 50, let's say. So these values 34.5, 161.68.3 are the percentage of the students who got a marks within this range. Okay, within two standard deviations. Then Chandrasekhara, sir, you mentioned that for two-tailed test, the factors corresponding to the desired confidence level is 1.65, but in IISc it is shown as 1.96. There it is considered one-tailed test. What is difference happened? Can you explain me? Oh, very nice question. In IRC 58, 1.96, I had to see, I have to cross-check it. Without that, I cannot reply you. But yeah, at this moment, what I can say you that in concrete mixes, we are adopting most of the things from building infrastructure. So in building infrastructure, we have this 1.65 is the tolerance factor. Yeah, it's a tolerance value based upon the supervision that will be done at the field condition. So we are taking all the values from there. So might be there is some deviation, but I have to cross check in IRC 58, then I can.
Sir, this is Chandrasekhar, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Actually, I've seen it. There it is considered only 1.96. I don't know because actually we need to take only two tests because it's considering both positive and negative values.
True.
I don't know why that deviation is there. So
See, payments, concrete payments. If you look back at 7 years back, we were not having concrete payments. Okay.
yes.
Right. So right now we are upgrading it to concrete payments. So there will be some variations between different codes. Right. The statistical analysis that they did, whether it's a one tail or two tail. So you are the young guys, you will be coming and doing the research, and we have to find out these mistakes, and we have to tell to the ministry that this is the deviation, whether makes it a constant or change it. So you need to provide some fundamental reasonings there. Okay.
Okay.
So you can open the IRC website. Okay, monthly basis they will be coming with some revisions. In that they will be publishing it online. That if you want to provide some comments, you can provide it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Then, sir, once again, please tell about NMS of aggregate meaning. NMS is nominal maximum size. As we discussed that if you do the sieve analysis, okay, let's say if I have 20 mm aggregate, what will be happening? It will be passing completely from 40 mm aggregate, 40 mm sieve size. It will be passing completely from 31.5. It will be passing completely from 22.5. But it will be retaining somewhat. It will be retaining on 20 mm. So I cannot say 40 mm is the maximum size. Maximum size is the smallest sieve from which 100% of the aggregate passes, and nominal maximum size is the first sieve. After 100% passes, it is the first sieve upon which some of the aggregates will be retaining. Here in your case, when we are taking 20 mm aggregates, they are retaining over 20 mm sieve, some of the fraction, not 40. Okay, so some means less than 10%, and that sieve will be calling as a nominal maximum size. Then minimum cement content 360, is it for M30? No. Is it for M40? But yeah, I have to again cross check it. For M30 also it will be, I think, 325. I have to cross check it. So queries on design aspect, is granular subbase have any role in design of rigid payments as per IC? Okay. In case GSB is not having any role in design of rigid payment, only for drainage, then can we replace it with geocomposite layer? See, very nice question, Kiran. So what we have two roles of GSP. One is the suppression layer, okay, or you can say crack resistance layer, and the one is the drainage layer. So we have to provide two GSB layers, right? So one with the poorly graded aggregates, or you can say gap graded aggregates, but one with the dense graded aggregates. Right, you can replace the suppression layer. When we are using dense graded GSB, you can replace it with geotextile, because geotextiles will be giving you good suppression, but geotextile will not be providing you to that extent the permeability. Okay.
One point here, we are using a membrane as a separation layer between the DLC and PQC. Okay.
That's a different thing. This separation layer.
So what I'm talking is GSB is the below DLC, and GSB we are not taking any part of it as a payment design. Because even though there is a table 3 is giving the K value for the granular, cemented granular or cemented granular base, it is nowhere used in the design aspects. But as
sorry, I will interrupt you here.
let me complete one.
Okay.
So as you suggested, GSB is as a separation layer, maybe between the DLC and the subgrade, and also as a drainage. What I'm mentioning is geocomposite layer. Geocomposite is not a geotextile; it's a 6 mm to 13 mm varying thickness will be having depending upon the drainage component. It only acts for a drainage purpose.
Okay, then definitely, then if it is there, then definitely you can use it. Because nowadays many of these components are coming geotextile,
Unfortunately, what's happening is in our IRC 58, we are mentioning the GSB layer. We are just showing the GSB layer 100 mm, 150 mm thickness. In all the projects, the NHI projects, wherever rigid pavement is mentioning, they are mentioning minimum thickness of 150 mm GSB layer has to be used, irrespective of the design criteria.
Yeah.
So what is the possibility of mentioning the GSB as only drainage layer? It is not a part of the design.
See what happens, Kiran sir. See, we have all this. See, the code doesn't allow you, in fact, to use the geomembrane, right, for a separation layer. But now they are coming slightly because earlier we didn't have this data. Okay, field data.
So, geocomposite, as per SP42, geocomposite is allowed as a drainage layer. As
But
per SP42 drainage code, the geocomposite is for the purpose of the drainage.
Okay, so if it is not mentioned in your tender, then you can use it. But if specifically mentioned in your tender, then you have to follow 58.
No, that's what I'm saying. If it is mentioned or not mentioned, if the GSB, if it is doesn't have the role in the design aspects.
Yeah. See, when you are going with the national highways, the K value doesn't contribute it. But when you're going with the minor roads, where you're not providing DLC, then it is having a significant contribution on the K value. So let's say we are designing the national highways as per your query. Okay, so as per your query, we have to provide the GSB for drainage. We can go with the geocomposite layer. I totally agree with you. We can definitely go with it, but it depends upon the tender. First thing, because you are talking about the NHEIs, and also as a designer, if somebody comes to me, okay, they say can you recommend this thing? We don't have the field data right now. If we have the field data, that field data will be going to the IRC, then we'll be having some provisions in the codes. So it will take some time for the for the IRC committee to consider all these values. Right? Let's say if you are providing something, it is failing, then who will be responsible?
Yeah, right. That's absolutely fine. What I mentioned, if something is obligation with respect to schedules of a tender document, that's a different issue. If it is not there, even in such cases also, GSB is making as a mandatory of 150 mm, even not even the 100 mm.
Yeah, true.
So because of this one, even as the geocomposite is came into the codes, even SP42 drainage code recommends using a geocomposite, especially said the retaining walls to reduce the filter media. Filter media is completely taken off. Only geocomposite composite sheet is using as a drainage layer. Its performance is much higher. You can refer once in the SP42 also. So if this is going need, I think SP58 also they have mentioned somewhere. I'm not sure. I'll come back. I'll put a message on that one, a specific code, specific class. So if it is there, I request in your future recommendations with IRC committees or any this one, just explore the possibility of avoiding the GSB if it is satisfied with the geocomposite. Because it's an environmental.
Yeah. See what happens in these IRC committees. We have field engineers as well as the designers. Okay, we have to listen to both the things because we can recommend something, but it is not feasible. So we have to talk to the field engineers like you. So if you can, show me some data, if you can send me some data, so definitely next time when we'll be meeting or if they are inviting me, definitely I'll suggest this thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the good question. So then the next question is, what corrective measures are required in blended cement as OPC are now rarely available? Okay, see, correction measures. Correction measure is that in order to see, like okay, I'll talk about the field application directly. Okay, so field application we have we have some codes like IS 269. Okay, where we say that if you want to use this type of the cement, this should be the content. So normally correction factors are that you can do the chemical composition test, you can do the pozzolanic reactivity test once you are getting a new material. But if you are getting a fly ash which has already been, reported as a good material which can replace the cement, then we have to follow the codes. And code says that there is a separate guidelines on the fly ash, which will be suggesting you the specific surface area, the chemical composition. If it is falling with this thing, then definitely you can go up to 50% as per the codal provisions. So I think I could, answer your question. Correction measures. Yeah, I think I could answer. If you want to know that whether the cement can be used, whether the fly ash or all these things can be used, then how to use it. So we have to follow the specifications. We have separate specifications, but separate materials. Then is the slump requirement same as PQC of continuously reinforced concrete pavements? Oh, okay, very nice question. Slump requirement, because see, I have to check. I cannot answer at this time. I have to see whether the slump requirement, as far as my knowledge goes, the maximum nominal size will be reducing little bit based upon the area of the steel that you are using and the clear cover. And when it's reducing the maximum nominal size, and then I think based upon your steel content, the slump requirement will be changing. Okay, but I have to, I have to cross check it. Then only I can reply to your answer. So next question, Pramod. PQC with PPC cement is same as OPC. See, we are designing based upon flexure strength. So if the flexure strength achieved at 28 days of the curing will be same, so definitely it will be same. But normally, if you are using some fly ash blended cement, then the strength that will be achieved at 28 days will be lesser. But if we check the strength at 56 days or the later days, it will be more. Okay. Then can we design PQC grades as per the flexure strength indices? Yeah, definitely. We have to design the PQC based upon flexure strength only. Okay, because the code also says that you have to do, and all the researchers, because if you see this shear force bending moment diagram, it should say in the pure bending. So we need to design based upon the flexure strength. But yeah, for the quality control, we cannot cut the flexural beams from the field. So in that case, we are having the coarse samples only. So then we have to relate the flexure strength with the compressive strength in the laboratory. Okay, for the quality control only. But if somebody is coming to you to design the PQC, never ever follow the compressive strength, always follow the flexure strength. Okay, if you want to be on the conservative side. Importance of offset of DLC. Yeah. So normally what will happen, we let's say we are using 3.5 meter of PQC, so the DLC will be 0.5 meters more here, 0.5 meter more here, so that the main purpose of DLC is to provide a stable support. And when the pavers are coming, paver will be having steel tires, right? It can erode the subbase. So for that, we are providing a support for the pavers. So that's why we need to provide the offset. With 0.32 water by cement ratio, it is possible to get a uniform mix. Yeah, definitely. And we have to use super plasticizers. So what is the maximum limit? So see, super plasticizers always they are changing. Okay, new chemical companies are saying they are coming. They are saying okay, you can use up to 0.6%. Somebody is saying 1.2%. So in Codal, normally we recommend not to go beyond 2%. Okay, based upon the type of the super plasticizer, whether it's a super plasticizer. Nowadays, more super plasticizers are coming. So the company will be giving you the optimum limit of the super plasticizer, but the maximum limit, okay, because normally the normal limit will be between 0.6% to 1.5%. Yeah, same. Drainage layer open graded or closed graded? Drainage layer should be open graded so that the water can be passed out. But if you are using the GSB as a separation layer, it should be a closed graded GSB layer. I think these were the questions, and the questions of some of the questions which I could not reply, I'll cross check it. You please drop me a message, I'll reply to you.
Yeah, once again, thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Chaitanya to provide conclusion.
Sir, I have a small question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, there is a compound like calcium hydroxide when you addition to CHGL, so which may cause the deterioration of concrete due to mixing of sulfate. So what is the reason, like how to do that, like to decrease the amount?
See, if you do the microstructure analysis, around 60 to 80% will be calcium silicate hydrate.
Yes,
Up to 60% you say. 20% will be calcium hydroxide, and other carbonate and all the things you can say trimlite, they will be there. So calcium hydroxide, the mechanism is that the calcium and there will be hydrogen bond. So when sulfate is coming, so it will be first reacting with the calcium hydroxide, and then the calcium hydroxide will be converting into, if chloride is coming, calcium chloride will be forming. When sulfate is coming, calcium sulfate will be coming, and it could be leached out very easily. So better then inviting more sulfate or the chloride sand to come inside the concrete mixtures and detroit it. So the best way to reduce the proportion of calcium hydroxide is to convert calcium hydroxide into CHS gel. So that's where we are using all the supplementary cementitious admixtures such as fly ash, silica fume. We are adding so that we can reduce the consumption, we can reduce the proportion of CH. Okay, and simultaneously we can increase the strength of the concrete and durability.
So, because of the silica amount in the fly ash and silica fume, so that will react with the CaSO4. So it will convert into CHGL.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank
And
you.
also amorphous silica, not the
Yes,
crystalline
yes.
silica.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all. I will give you a brief summary of today's FDP session 2, which is on concrete mix design fundamentals. In the start, Sir has mentioned about what are the guidelines to be followed for the design of different layers of concrete pavement. Later on, Sir briefly explained the fundamentals of pavement quality concrete, which consists determination of characteristic compressive strength and target mean strength, and how many samples should we take for testing, and why we should take that many samples, and what is the nominal maximum aggregate rates was explained very clearly. And later on, gave an insight on testing conditions and thumb rules for fixing the thickness of PQC layer. So further elaborate the difference between 3-point and 4-point bending flexural tests and justify the use of 4-point bending test, which resembles the pavement condition, and which is followed by the explanation of factors like water binder ratio, degree of compaction, aggregate properties, and how they will affect the compressive strength of concrete. So further distinguish the difference between wave batching and volume batching, and clearly mentioned that as a designer one should follow the volume batching, and for a contractor the value should be given in the corresponding weights using the volume batching. So further mentioned about the quality control checks during construction of concrete pavement. Finally, explained in detail each and every step that involved in design process, which includes volumetrics, selection of water binder ratio, estimation of SCM, force aggregate, fine aggregate, calculation of cement content, and mix calculations. In the last 10 minutes, R has covered some topics like dry line concrete and the design steps for DLC. Okay, SAR has explained each and every point very elaborately. Even a non-civil engineering student can understand it very easily. On behalf of Civil Engineering, Department of Civil Engineering, thank you for the wonderful presentation and explanation, which is thought-provoking, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. We will meet once again on 11th.
Yeah, on recycling, right?
Yeah.
You have to remind me, okay?
Let's-
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So participants will meet at 2:30 p.m. today. Please log in 15 minutes before the session.
Okay, thanks to all participants for your patient listening. Please join the session at 2:15 p.m. Thank you.
వాడు ఎవరో వాడు నిలబడుకో